Today, we delve into the world of amateur theatre. Two young couples became friendly through their shared interest in amateur dramatics, and an affair began. But as so often with affairs, each person wanted different things. One wanted exciting sex and lots of it, the other wanted to find love and live happily ever after. Tragically, the result was the murder of a totally innocent person and so many lives destroyed. Today's story centres on the Warrington based Centenary Operatic and Dramatic Society. You know the sort of place. I'm sure there's one in a town or city very near you. This society was formed in 1901 and over the years has produced a number of shows. A society such as these attracts a variety of talents. I use the term very loosely. From those who potentially have the ability to be a professional and others who are just there for the fun. Kathy joined after she saw and was impressed with their production of My Fair Lady in 1989. 2 years later, she met Chris Lineker through the society. They began dating, they fell in love, and they got married. By the time we pick up the story in April 1998, the couple had two young daughters and Catherine, as well as continuing to take on starring roles with the society, had progressed in her career to deputy head teacher. Chris was also doing well in his work life. He was an IT consultant. Life was good for the family. The previous year, Chris had taken on a major production of The King and he got friendly with another of the leading men, a guy called Nick Cupid. He and his wife, 24-year-old Jenny, had two very young children too, and the two couples naturally became friendly, often socializing with each other at each other's houses. Jenny Cupid was classically attractive, and she knew it. An ex hairdresser, she wasn't selected for any of the big roles, and she was firmly in the chorus line at the society, but she had a really high opinion of herself, and she thought she wasn't cast in these roles as everyone was envious of her blonde hair, her pretty face, and her slim figure. A friend said, with Jenny, everything was just perfect or it wasn't. If she didn't get what she wanted when she wanted it, then you would know about it. Even when she married Nick, it was as if she was in love with the wedding and all the show rather than with Nick. Like all clubs we belong to in our communities, the society also had a strong social side. After shows and rehearsals, most of the cast would decamp to the nearby Bowling Green Hotel for a drink or two, and lots of trips were arranged to watch shows all over the country. Before the two couples made a trip to London in January 1997, Jenny Cupid had made it very clear to Chris Lineker that she wanted to be more than friends, much more. And it was on this trip that their affair began. Chris Lineker would later say he was flattered by the attention from a younger, very pretty woman. And for a man who had a thing about risky sex and pornography, he found Jenny's willingness to play out all his fantasies very exciting. The couple met at least once a week for sex, not just at each other's houses when their partners were out, but at Jenny's parents, in a forest nearby, in the highly romantic venue of a multi story car park in Blackpool. Hey, it takes all sorts, and in woods near Alton Towers. Chris wanted to tape their sessions so he could watch them back in his own time, and they started at first just filming themselves, but then they progressed into filmed threesomes. Look, you do use my philosophy in life, okay? But on one occasion, this threesome was with Chris's own brother in law. Wow, imagine that. It would put a completely different slant on the family Christmas lunch when you ask him to pass you the sprouts. Jenny's husband also was aware, Neil. Indeed, he actually joined his wife and Chris on one occasion. Meanwhile, Chris's wife, Kathy, she was very much unaware. But as we hear so often about affairs, the strength of feeling was not equal on both sides. Jennifer Cupid madly loved Chris Lineker, and she thought that by doing everything that Chris wanted, he would leave his wife and the pair could start a new life together in Canada. But this just wasn't on Chris's agenda at all, and he enjoyed his comfortable middle class family life with his exciting affair on the side. He once wrote a note to Jenny saying, "Yes, I have everything, a perfect family, but that doesn't stop me loving you. What we have is special. We've shared almost every sexual experience together, and I can't imagine life without you." But he was increasingly worried about Jenny as he could see how much she wanted them to be together, and he could see how jealous she was of his wife, as she was the person that Chris went home to. He was desperate that his life wasn't ruined by his wife finding out about the affair, and he was also increasingly concerned that Jenny might self harm. Frankly, for Chris, the situation had gone from something that was fun and enjoyable to something much more serious. Not that this stopped Chris from continuing to have sex with Jenny, and he didn't seem to have any real guilt at what he was doing. On the 13th of April, he and his wife celebrated the christening of their two children. And still days later, 16th of April, he was having sex with Jenny in a pub car park. As he drove home to his wife that evening, Chris had no idea that this would have been the last time he'd had sex with Jenny. On April the 17th, Jenny Cupit went to Asda at about 11:30 a.m., having asked her mum-in-law to babysit. She picked up a normal shopping of groceries, celery fruit, and a kitchen devil multi-purpose knife with a black plastic handle and a 4-inch blade. She put the shopping in her car, but she put the knife in her handbag. Knowing that Chris was out, she went to Catherine Lineker's house, where Catherine was there with her 4-month baby. Jenny, in full view of the baby, went for Catherine with a glass bottle, smashing her 8 times over the head. Bewildered and on the edge of consciousness, Catherine staggered into the lounge where Jenny stabbed her with the kitchen knife in the back. She thrust the knife into her so deeply and savagely that it snapped as it hit the spine. And not finished, Jenny then stabbed Catherine in the stomach, piercing her liver and major arteries. It was a terrible scene and there was blood everywhere, as Catherine died on the floor of her lounge at home. She was just 33 years old when she died, with everything to live for. There was no remorse from Jenny after this most violent of acts. She didn't suddenly think, "What have I done?" Instead, it was hours later when Jenny hysterically called the emergency services, sobbing that, "It is my best friend." When the emergency services arrived, Jenny dropped to the floor in agony and pain, but this wasn't fooling the paramedics. The lead paramedic later said the young girl dropped to the floor. It was as if she was acting. It was done to prevent herself from hurting herself as she fell. The girl's eyes were closed. She was deliberately holding them shut. I said to her, "Get back on your feet." And she got up and walked to the ambulance. When questioned by police, Jenny told how she'd been trying to protect her friend, Kathy, from a skinhead who forced his way into the house. She described a 19-year-old man with a shaven head wearing a brown jacket, saying, "He forced his way into the house and told me to get back in. He shut the door and pushed the knife into Kathy. I tried to stop him and he cut my right hand." But this story didn't wash at all, as the police found bloody footwear marks leading into the playroom at the house. And there was also clear evidence that attempts had been made to wipe away substances from the fridge and the bench in the kitchen. And the blue bottle that she'd used in the attack was the next day found in the bin bag outside Kathy's home. Jenny Cupit was arrested on suspicion of murder. It was now she changed her story, admitting that she had killed Kathy, but it had been in self-defense. She told how Kathy had discovered the affair and attacked her, and she had killed her as she tried to defend herself. She kept on saying she hated me, Jenny said. She hated me for being so thin and so popular. Then I grabbed hold of the knife and it slipped and went into her. Detectives didn't believe a word of it, and Jenny Cupit stood trial for murder at Chester Crown Court. She pleaded guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility and denied murdering Kathy. Giving evidence, Chris told how he was at first hesitant about starting an affair and said he'd made it clear all the time to Jenny that he would never leave his wife. So what was it? What was the catalyst that caused Jenny to choose to kill Catherine on that April day? Why'd she just snapped? It's unclear. Experts said she wasn't suffering any symptoms of mental illness, but it transpired that in June 1993, soon after the birth of her youngest child, she had developed an eating disorder, bulimia, and also become severely depressed, to such an extent that on one occasion she tried to take her own life. The court heard that she was treated with drugs by her GP until November 1997, and she'd felt well ever since. Dramatically, on the sixth day of the trial, Jenny Cupid changed her plea to guilty of murder, sentencing her to life in prison. The judge addressed the sobbing Jenny. He told her, "I accept you've had problems in life, but it's extremely difficult to believe all that you have said. You are a serial liar. Your problems are no worse than those of hundreds of fellow human beings who have not behaved as you did. You must now face reality and not fanciful inventions. You took the life of a blameless and talented woman of 33. You've left Kathy Lineker's two children without their mum, as well as your own children without their mother for a very long time. Like Kathy, those four children are totally innocent, and because of what you did, their lives are irreversibly damaged. Goodness knows how they will react when they learned fully of what happened on that day. What you did, it was an absolute outrage. You killed a good woman out of lust for her husband and jealousy for her." Chris Lineker left court without comment with his parents. He left via the side door. Outside the court, Catherine's dad, Kenneth, said he was satisfied with the outcome, and it had shown that his daughter was an innocent victim. And he said he didn't feel any hatred towards Jenny, but incomprehension. He said, "We cannot understand how one human being could do this to another, particularly someone who only wanted to help." He also said they would make sure their two grandchildren grew up knowing what a wonderful mother they had, adding, "We will tell them about their mum's childhood, about the scraps she got into, about her love of children, about her love of teaching, and about how much she loved them." Kathy wanted them to be happy and content as she was. She'd have wanted to pass on to them her love of life and her sense of humour, her ability to relate to people, and her honesty. After the trial, Jenny's husband Nick told her he just wanted to rebuild his life and to take care of the couple's two children. This next bit is a strange one, see what you make of it. He insisted he knew nothing about his wife's 16-month affair with Chris Lineker. He did admit to taking part in a threesome with his wife and Chris in his lounge in November 1997, but he said for him this was just an isolated incident and he strongly regretted it. So there we have it, an innocent woman with so much to live for, dead at just 33. I found it quite difficult reading how the tabloid press dealt with this case. Jenny Cooper, as we've heard, was convicted of murder, but you can probably imagine how she was referred to as bed hopping, sex mad, and so on and so on. And yet Chris Lineker is treated very differently. Of course, he committed no crime. He did not kill his wife. That was only Jenny Cooper. And the reality is that he has to live with the decisions he took for events which led to Catherine's murder for the rest of his life. And of course, his children will read and hear and watch about what happened, and they'll make their own judgments. If you found this video interesting, please do watch one of my others. Until next time, I've been Adam Lloyd.